Most men walk through life carrying invisible chains. They allow themselves to be diminished, overlooked, and treated as lesser beings. They accept scraps when they deserve the feast. I have watched this pattern repeat itself across decades, in drawing rooms and battlefields alike, in corridors of power and common meeting halls. The strong devour the weak, not because they are naturally superior, but because the weak have never learned the fundamental laws of respect. You have been conditioned to believe that respect is earned through kindness alone, that if you are agreeable enough, helpful enough, accommodating enough, the world will recognize your worth and treat you accordingly. This is perhaps the most dangerous delusion ever planted in a man's mind. I have seen empires fall and leaders crumble because they confused weakness for virtue. Let me be abundantly clear about something. The world does not respect the meek. It respects strength, not the brutish strength of the schoolyard bully, but the calculated strength of the man who knows his worth and refuses to compromise it. The man who understands that respect is not a gift given freely, but a position that must be claimed and defended. I shall teach you 7 principles that will transform how others perceive and treat you. These are not theories dreamed up in comfortable studies. These are laws I discovered through fire, through failure, through watching men rise and fall based on their understanding of human nature. Apply them, and you will never again suffer the indignity of being dismissed or disrespected. Asterisk, asterisk. Principle 1. Command through presence, not volume. Asterisk, asterisk. The first mistake weak men make is believing that loudness equals authority. I have observed countless individuals attempt to establish dominance through raised voices and aggressive gestures. This is the behavior of someone who has already lost. True command emanates from stillness, from the quiet confidence of a man who knows he belongs in any room he enters. When I entered chambers for the first time, I did not announce my arrival with grand speeches or dramatic entrances. I observed, I absorbed, I let my presence settle into the space like morning fog, subtle but undeniable. The men who had been there for years began to sense something had shifted, though they could not immediately identify what. Your posture speaks before your mouth opens. Your pace declares your status before you utter a single word. The man who rushes appears desperate. The man who slouches appears defeated. But the man who moves with deliberate purpose, who carries himself as though he has every right to occupy whatever space he chooses, that man commands attention without demanding it. I learned this during my early years when I watched seasoned politicians work a room. The most effective among them never seemed to be performing. They simply existed with such certainty that others naturally deferred to them. They understood that presence is not about taking up physical space, but about filling psychological space. Practice this immediately. When you enter any gathering, resist the urge to announce yourself or seek immediate validation. Instead, take 3 seconds to survey the room. Let your eyes settle on various points with calm assessment. Move to your position without hurry, as though you have chosen precisely where you wish to be. This simple adjustment will change how every person in that space relates to you. Asterisk, asterisk. Principle 2. Silence is your most powerful weapon. Asterisk, asterisk. Most men fear silence because they mistake it for emptiness. They rush to fill every pause with words, explanations, justifications. This reveals profound insecurity. I've learned that the man who speaks least often speaks with the greatest impact. Silence accomplishes what 1,000 words cannot. It forces others to reveal their true thoughts. It creates tension that compels people to expose their weaknesses. When someone attacks you verbally and you respond with calm silence, you place them in an impossible position. Their aggression appears foolish against your composure. During my most challenging negotiations, I discovered that the side which spoke first after a difficult question was usually the side that lost. The urge to fill uncomfortable quiet is overwhelming for most people. They will offer concessions, reveal their real position, or make statements they later regret simply to escape the pressure of silence. This does not mean you become mute or antisocial. It means you speak with intention rather than compulsion. When you do break your silence, your words carry weight because they are rare. People lean in to hear what the quiet man has to say because they know he does not waste words. I recall a particular confrontation where a colleague attempted to humiliate me publicly with accusations and insults. Every instinct urged me to defend myself immediately, to match his volume and aggression. Instead, I simply looked at him for 10 full seconds without expression. The room grew uncomfortable. His bluster began to seem excessive. When I finally spoke, my single sentence carried more authority than his entire tirade. Asterisk, asterisk. Principle 3, never defend what should be obvious. Asterisk, asterisk. Weak men exhaust themselves, explaining their qualifications, justifying their decisions, and defending their right to hold opinions. This behavior broadcasts insecurity more effectively than any accusation could. When you explain yourself to those who have no authority over your choices, you grant them power they do not possess. I have observed that the moment you begin defending something that should be self-evident, you have already conceded the battle. If someone questions your competence, your integrity, or your right to speak on a matter, responding with a list of your credentials makes you appear desperate for their approval. The confident response to unwarranted challenges is not explanation, but dismissal. Not rude dismissal, but the calm dismissal of someone who knows his worth, is not subject to debate by inferiors. When someone attempts to diminish you, treat their attempt as you would treat a child's tantrum, worthy of neither anger nor extensive response. This principle extends beyond personal attacks to everyday situations. When you make a decision in your area of expertise, do not preface it with apologies or excessive justification. State your position clearly and allow others to adjust accordingly. The man who constantly seeks permission for his own thoughts will never be taken seriously. I learned this lesson painfully when I first entered political life. I would spend considerable energy explaining my reasoning to those who had already decided to oppose me, regardless of my arguments. This accomplished nothing except making me appear uncertain of my own positions. Once I stopped defending what needed no defense, opposition became far less comfortable attacking what they could not shake. Asterisk, asterisk, principle 4, control information. Like currency, asterisk, asterisk, information is the most valuable currency in human affairs, yet most men spend it like drunken sailors. They reveal their plans, expose their weaknesses, and broadcast their intentions to anyone willing to listen. This is strategic suicide. I learned early that what people do not know about you cannot be used against you. The weak man believes that transparency builds trust. The strong man understands that mystery commands respect. When you reveal everything about yourself, your motivations, your methods, your fears, you hand others the tools to manipulate and diminish you. I have watched brilliant men destroy themselves simply because they could not resist the urge to explain their every thought and action. During my years in government, I observed a fascinating pattern. The ministers who shared their private concerns and doubts with colleagues found those very concerns weaponized against them later. The ones who kept their own counsel, who revealed only what served their purposes, maintained their authority even during difficult periods, This does not mean you become secretive or dishonest. It means you become selective. You share what advances your position and withhold what weakens it. When someone asks probing questions about your personal affairs, your plans, or your concerns, you redirect rather than reveal. A simple, "That remains to be seen," or "I prefer to keep my own counsel on that matter," establishes boundaries while maintaining dignity. I recall a particular negotiation where the opposing party spent considerable effort trying to determine my real position on a contentious issue. They sent intermediaries, made casual inquiries, even attempted to provoke emotional responses that might reveal my true thoughts. Because I had learned to guard my intentions, they entered the final discussions blind while I held complete information about their position. The outcome was never in doubt. Asterisk, asterisk, Principle 5. Respond to attacks by elevating the stakes. Asterisk, asterisk, when someone disrespects you, your instinct may be to match their level of aggression or sink to their tactics. This is precisely what they expect and exactly how you lose. The man who responds to petty insults with petty responses reveals himself to be petty. Instead, you must elevate the entire interaction to a level where you possess natural advantage. I discovered this principle during a heated exchange in Parliament. A particularly aggressive member attempted to embarrass me with personal attacks and juvenile mockery. Rather than responding in kind, I shifted the entire discussion to matters of national importance, speaking with such gravity and authority that his previous comments appeared not just inappropriate, but almost treasonous in their triviality. The elevation strategy works because it forces your opponent to either rise to your level, which they cannot do if they initiated with disrespect, or continue their low behavior, which now appears even more degraded by contrast. You transform yourself from a participant in their game into a judge of their character. When someone insults your competence, do not defend your qualifications. Instead, address the larger question of what standards should govern such discussion. When someone attempts to humiliate you publicly, do not counterattack personally. Instead, speak to the broader principles at stake in a way that makes their behavior seem small and unworthy. This requires tremendous discipline because every fiber of your being will want to strike back directly, but the man who can elevate conflict transforms every attack into an opportunity to demonstrate his superior character and judgment. Your attacker becomes a foil that highlights your own dignity. Asterisk, asterisk. Principle 6, make others invest in your approval. Asterisk, asterisk. The fundamental error most men make is chasing approval from those whose opinions carry no weight. They exhaust themselves trying to win over critics, seeking validation from the indifferent, begging for recognition from those who profit from withholding it. This backwards approach guarantees perpetual disrespect. I learned to reverse this dynamic entirely. Instead of seeking their approval, I created situations where others sought mine. This shift in psychology changes every interaction in your favor. When people want something from you, whether it be your attention, your expertise, or your endorsement, they naturally treat you with greater consideration. The method is surprisingly simple, but requires patience. You must become genuinely valuable to others before expecting their respect. Not valuable in the sense of being useful or convenient, but valuable in the sense of possessing something they genuinely need or want. This might be knowledge, connections, skills, or simply the reputation for sound judgment. During my wilderness years, when many had written me off politically, I continued, developing my expertise and maintaining my standards. I did not chase those who had dismissed me. Instead, I focused on being prepared for the moment when circumstances would make my knowledge indispensable. When that moment arrived, the same people who had ignored me suddenly competed for my attention. The psychological principle is profound. People value what they must work to obtain and dismiss what comes too easily. When you make your approval, your time, your assistance something that must be earned, it automatically becomes more precious to others. They begin to modify their behavior to maintain access to what you offer. Asterisk, asterisk, Principle 7, never accept partial respect. Asterisk, asterisk, the final principle separates those who command lasting respect from those who receive only temporary courtesy. Partial respect is worse than no respect because it creates the illusion of progress while actually cementing your subordinate position. When someone treats you well only when it costs them nothing, or respects you only in private, or acknowledges your worth only when others are not watching, they are training you to accept scraps. I have seen men destroy their own authority by accepting conditional respect. They tolerate being interrupted in meetings but praised in private. They allow their ideas to be dismissed publicly but acknowledged quietly. They accept being excluded from important decisions while being consulted on trivial matters. This teaches everyone around them that disrespect carries no real consequences. The man who commands complete respect establishes clear standards and enforces them consistently. He does not negotiate his dignity or accept situational courtesy. When someone treats him with disrespect in any context, he addresses it immediately and definitively. This may create temporary discomfort, but it establishes permanent boundaries. I recall a situation where a colleague thought he could publicly disagree with me in harsh terms while expecting to maintain our private cooperation. I made it clear that our professional relationship would reflect the standards he had established through his public behavior. He quickly learned that respect cannot be compartmentalized. This principle requires you to be willing to accept short-term consequences for long-term positioning. You may lose opportunities, face criticism, or encounter resistance when you refuse to accept partial respect. But the alternative is a lifetime of being treated as a convenient subordinate rather than an equal. The man who demands complete respect in all contexts eventually receives it. Others learn that the cost of disrespecting him is too high and the benefits of treating him well are too valuable to risk. These principles form the foundation of respect, but they are merely the beginning. The man who applies them mechanically will see some improvement, but the man who understands their deeper purpose will transform completely. I must now share with you the advanced strategies that separate those who command occasional deference from those who inspire genuine fear and admiration. Asterisk, asterisk, the psychology of dominance without aggression. Asterisk, asterisk. I've observed throughout my years that the most dangerous men are not the ones who threaten openly, but those who project inevitable consequence. The bully makes noise and creates temporary fear. The true authority figure creates the sense that crossing him would be unwise, though he never explains precisely why. This distinction becomes clear when you understand that respect built on fear of immediate retaliation is fragile. The moment your ability to retaliate is questioned, that respect evaporates. But respect built on the sense that you are someone who should not be tested, that operates on a different level entirely. During one particularly tense cabinet meeting, I watched as a minister attempted to publicly challenge a decision I had made. Rather than defending my position or threatening consequences, I simply looked at him with what I can only describe as mild curiosity, as though I were observing an interesting but irrelevant phenomenon. The silence stretched until others began to shift uncomfortably. When I finally spoke, it was not to address his challenge, but to continue with the next item of business as though his objection had never occurred. The psychological impact was profound. He had thrown his best punch and been treated as though he did not exist. The room understood immediately that he had revealed himself to be powerless, while I had demonstrated that I operated beyond the reach of his attacks. He never challenged me publicly again. This technique requires absolute confidence in your own worth. You cannot fake the energy of someone who genuinely believes that certain behaviors are beneath their notice. But when you truly internalize your value, treating disrespect as irrelevant becomes natural rather than performed. Asterisk, asterisk, the art of strategic withdrawal. Asterisk, asterisk. Most men believe that maintaining respect requires constant vigilance, immediate response to every slight, perpetual defense of their position. This exhausts them and actually diminishes their authority. I learned that sometimes the most powerful response is complete withdrawal of your presence and attention. When someone disrespects you, particularly in a social or professional setting, your instinct may be to address it immediately. Sometimes this is correct, but often the more devastating response is to simply remove yourself from their sphere entirely. Not dramatically, not with announcements or ultimatums, but with the quiet finality of someone who has concluded that continuing the interaction serves no purpose. I recall a business associate who thought he could treat me dismissively in front of others while expecting to maintain our professional relationship privately. Rather than confronting him or explaining why his behavior was unacceptable, I simply stopped being available to him. When he called, I was occupied with other matters. When he sought meetings, my schedule was unfortunately full. When he appeared at gatherings, I engaged with everyone except him. The psychological pressure this created was extraordinary. He found himself cut off from access he had taken for granted, forced to wonder what had changed and why. Others began to notice the shift and draw their own conclusions about what he might have done to deserve such treatment. Within weeks, he was seeking ways to repair whatever damage he had caused, though I had never explicitly told him he had caused any. This strategy works because it leverages a fundamental human fear, the fear of being rendered irrelevant. When you withdraw your attention completely, you force others to confront the possibility that they have lost something valuable permanently. The uncertainty becomes unbearable for those who are accustomed to taking your presence for granted. Asterisk, asterisk, reframing insults as opportunities, asterisk, asterisk. The weak man is destroyed by insults because he accepts the frame they establish. Someone calls him incompetent, and he scrambles to prove his competence. Someone questions his authority, and he desperately tries to demonstrate it. Someone mocks his appearance or background, and he either lashes out or retreats in shame. All of these responses validate the attacker's premise that their opinion matters. I discovered that the most effective response to any insult is to reframe it entirely, to shift the conversation to ground where you possess natural advantage. When someone attacks your competence, you do not defend your qualifications. Instead, you question their judgment in making such assessments. When someone mocks your background, you do not justify your origins. Instead, you examine what kind of person finds such attacks worthwhile. During my early political career, an opponent attempted to embarrass me by referencing my family's financial difficulties and my relatively modest beginnings. The room waited to see how I would respond to this personal attack. Instead of defending my background or attacking his, I said, "I find it fascinating that my colleague believes a man's worth is determined by circumstances beyond his control rather than by what he does with the opportunities life presents. It reveals far more about his character than about mine. The attack was not only neutralized but reversed. He appeared petty and small-minded, while I appeared dignified and philosophical. The audience began to see the exchange as revealing something important about both of our characters, and the revelation was not flattering to him. This technique requires practice, because your natural instinct will be to defend yourself directly. But when you consistently refuse to accept the premises of attacks against you, when you instead examine what those attacks reveal about the attackers, you establish yourself as someone who operates on a higher level than your critics. Asterisk, asterisk, the power of delayed response, asterisk, asterisk. In our age of immediate communication, the pressure to respond instantly to challenges, questions, or requests has intensified dramatically. Most men feel compelled to answer immediately, as though delay somehow weakens their position. This is a profound error that costs them enormous amounts of power and respect. I learned that the most thoughtful response is rarely the immediate one, and that people respect answers that clearly required consideration more than those that appear automatic. When someone presents you with a challenge, a request, or even an insult, the phrase, "I shall give that the consideration it deserves," grants you tremendous advantage. First, it communicates that you are someone whose thoughts have value and cannot be commanded on demand. Second, it allows you time to craft a response that serves your interests rather than merely satisfying their expectations. Third, it often makes the other party reconsider whether their challenge was wise, as they now have time to anticipate your eventual response. During negotiations, I made it a practice never to respond to the first offer immediately, regardless of how attractive it might be. The simple act of saying, "That is interesting. I shall need time to evaluate it properly," invariably led to improved terms before I had even begun my evaluation. The other party would interpret my delay as potential rejection and begin improving their position preemptively. This principle extends far beyond formal negotiation. When someone asks you to commit your time, energy, or resources, the immediate yes or no reveals that you make important decisions impulsively. But the considered response suggests that you treat such matters with the seriousness they deserve. The delayed response also protects you from manipulation tactics that depend on immediate emotional reactions. When someone tries to pressure you with urgency, anger, or dramatic appeals, taking time to respond allows you to see their strategy clearly and respond to their actual position rather than their theatrical presentation. Asterisk, asterisk, creating consequences. Through reputation, asterisk, asterisk. Most men think in terms of direct confrontation when dealing with disrespect. They imagine themselves delivering devastating comebacks or demonstrating their power through immediate action. But the most effective consequences often come through reputation rather than direct retaliation. I understood early that my reputation was my most valuable asset, more precious than my wealth or my formal position. But I also learned that reputation could be weaponized, that the right word in the right ear at the right moment could create consequences far more severe than any direct action. When someone treats you poorly, particularly in professional settings, they have given you information about their character that others might find valuable. Not gossip or petty complaints, but factual observations about how they conduct themselves when they believe it costs them nothing. I once had a colleague who made a habit of taking credit for others' work while criticizing those same people in private. Rather than confronting him directly, I simply began asking pointed questions in meetings. When he presented an idea, I would say, "That sounds familiar. Didn't someone else propose something similar recently?" When he criticized absent colleagues, I would respond, "How interesting. That differs considerably from what I observed." I never accused him of anything directly, never made any formal complaints, never created dramatic confrontation, but others began to notice the pattern of my questions and comments. They started paying closer attention to his behavior and drawing their own conclusions. Within months, his reputation for integrity was severely damaged, not through any action I took against him, but through the simple process of ensuring that his actions received appropriate scrutiny. This approach is devastatingly effective because it is difficult to defend against. The person cannot accuse you of attacking them, since you have never made any direct accusation. They cannot demand that you stop, since you are merely asking reasonable questions or making factual observations. But the cumulative effect on their standing with others can be profound. Asterisk, asterisk. The final test of true authority. Asterisk, asterisk. Everything I have taught you leads to this ultimate question. Can you walk away from any situation without losing your sense of worth? The man who needs any particular job, relationship, or social position to maintain his self-respect will always be vulnerable to those who control access to these things. But the man who knows he can rebuild, restart, or redirect his life if necessary cannot be controlled through fear of loss. You now possess the 7 principles that transform how the world sees you. But knowledge without action remains powerless. I have watched brilliant men remain invisible because they understood these truths but lacked the courage to apply them. Do not become such a man. The choice before you is simple yet profound. You can return to the comfortable patterns of seeking approval, explaining yourself, and accepting whatever scraps of respect others choose to offer. Or you can begin today to command the respect you deserve. Every room you enter becomes an opportunity to practice these principles. Every conversation becomes a chance to demonstrate your worth without begging for recognition. I have given you the tools forged through decades of observing human nature at its most raw and revealing. Use them wisely, but use them completely. The man who applies these principles halfway will achieve nothing. The man who embraces them fully will never again wonder why others fail to see his value. The world is waiting to respect you. It simply needed to know that you respect yourself first.